I was upset over Tina's injury and memory loss. She took that chance to break up with me and destroyed all evidence of our relationship. Then she hooked up with her childhood sweetheart and pushed her notorious friend in front of me, smiling warmly but distantly, saying, "Ben, this is your girlfriend." Later on, when I finally moved my feelings elsewhere, Tina went all out consulting specialists to help me regain my memory. She sobbed, repeatedly emphasizing, "Ben, the person you love is obviously me." I just looked at her, hysterical, and smiled. I asked, "Really? Where's the evidence?" On the way home from the hospital, I scrolled through Instagram and saw that actress Tina was trending for her new relationship. Paparazzi caught a video of her entering a hotel holding hands with a famous actor named Eric. Before the public knew what was going on, the two openly admitted their relationship, revealing they had known each other for a long time and had just reunited, unable to hold back their feelings. The news exploded, and the internet was flooded with blessings. The story of actress Tina and up-and-coming actor Eric conquering the entertainment industry together was moving thousands of fans to tears. Within half an hour, articles about how they got together were everywhere online. I opened the video, checked the shooting date, then read every word of their romance story. They met in middle school, with Tina secretly crushing on him. After high school, she visited his college often without interfering. They both entered the entertainment field, rising from obscurity to stardom. The trending topic was filled with comments like, "Wow, childhood crush, first love, long-lost lovers, together at the peak. This couple is awesome. They were recently filming a college show on the campus where I teach. It's also why I ended up in the hospital." According to colleagues who visited me, Tina and Eric were there when an accident happened. A prop box fell due to a worker's mistake, and I rushed to push Tina out of the way, taking the hit instead. I passed out and was in a coma for 3 days. When I woke up, I'd lost my memory. I went off the trending list and scrolled to the top of my friends' list on Instagram. My finger hovered, unsure of where to land. Feeling strangely suffocated, I rolled down the window and leaned back, letting the evening breeze mess up my hair. Actually, I knew about Tina and Eric's relationship way earlier than everyone else. On my second day awake, Tina visited the hospital to return my phone left at the accident site. She politely but distantly said, "Ben, thank you. We'll cover all the medical costs. For anything else, contact my manager." She placed a sleek black card in front of me, smiling in relief like solving an old puzzle. "Ben, thank you." I was a bit dazed by her cool gaze, and as she turned to leave, panic hit me. I blurted, "Wait a minute." My head hurt. I struggled to ask, "Tina, did we know each other before?" Not because of her roles or the news, just a sense that we knew each other. She didn't answer. Instead, Eric entered, all in white. He hugged Tina right in front of me and took off his sunglasses, saying, "Of course you know each other." While I was still confused, another figure stepped into the room. Tina pushed them in front of me, smirking as she introduced, "Ben, this is your girlfriend. Also my friend, Linda." Linda came from a wealthy background, known for scandalous stories, wild partying and reckless driving. I found all this online later. Honestly, with all those rumors, I couldn't imagine how I got to know someone like her, let alone fall in love. After Tina's introduction, I instinctively looked at Linda, asking, "You're my girlfriend?" Her eyes teared up a bit. She knelt beside the bed, looking at me tenderly. "I can be," she said softly. "Huh? What I mean is, if you don't remember me, it's okay. We can meet again. I'll woo you again," she said. The familiarity when I saw Tina far outweighed what I sensed seeing Linda. Yet, oddly, when I looked into Linda's eyes, something buried deep inside me seemed to stir. In the midst of lost memories and Linda's convincing evidence, I mistook that indescribable feeling as forgotten love for her and chose to trust her. Time passed, and I discovered she was nothing like the online rumors. The temperamental person they depicted cared for me in the hospital with endless patience. She was attentive and gentle. Only when a nurse pricked the wrong spot did she show temper, immediately demanding, "Leave and get someone else." Contrary to her reputation, she cooked incredibly well, handling every meal with care. Even now, she drove slowly and steadily, respecting my unintended nap. When I awoke, a blanket she left for me covered me. Outside, the setting sun spilled across the sky, and Linda stood among trees talking on the phone. Her hair whipped in the wind. Seeing me awake, she ended the call and came over. Although I accepted she was supposedly my girlfriend, I still felt distant. When she reached the window, holding the blanket, I apologized. Sorry, I fell asleep. Did I delay anything for you? She opened the door, helped me out, and focused sharply on my eyes. Ben, she said firmly, remember this, you're always my #1 priority. 15 minutes later, we stepped out of the elevator and stood in front of a door. Linda smoothly punched in the code and opened it. Immediately, a familiar yet unfamiliar vibe hit me. I walked in somewhat hesitantly and stopped at a plain white sideboard. On it was a framed photo. To be specific, it was a photo of me and a blurred figure. From the angle, it seemed like a selfie. The figure stood behind frosted glass. All I could tell from the silhouette was that it was an adult woman. Then, I remembered a colleague peeling an orange by my hospital bed, muttering, "You always said you had a girlfriend but never mentioned who it was. Nor did she ever visit." Some even joked it might be a celebrity. Turns out it's the Lin family's second daughter. I raised my hand to touch the figure behind the glass and, for the first time since meeting her, called her name, Linda. I saw Tina again on a Wednesday evening when I returned to school to teach. I was walking from the lab building back to my office when I passed an empty classroom. There, Tina and Eric were sitting by the window, being interviewed by reporters. The golden sunset cut through the fluttering white curtains, casting a light over half of Tina, like it was lacing her with a soft glow. There's something I've never told anyone. In the dead of night, I often find myself overwhelmed by a sadness so strong, it almost prevents me from sleeping. It feels like I've lost someone important, and in my restless mind, it's Tina who appears. Then I wake up abruptly, incredulously asking myself, Ben, what are you thinking? No one can explain why my thoughts drift to Tina. Just like no one can tell me why seeing her sitting close to Eric, smiling at each other, makes me so sad. The reporters, trying to create a romantic vibe, asked about their relationship. One asked Tina to describe Eric in a sentence. Tina, with a fond look, softly said, "He's the light in my dark life." I thought about it for a bit. Maybe it's like the way people online describe them. The resilient girl who endured domestic violence from an alcoholic father finds a savior in the kind, wealthy schoolmate during her high school years. From then on, her heart belonged to him. The reporter, satisfied with the answer, exclaimed, "Wow," then asked Eric how Tina was like the heroine from his current show. Without hesitation, Eric said, "Her loyalty, of course." I stood quietly at the back like a shadowy onlooker, watching their hard-earned happiness. My phone rang unexpectedly, pulling me back to reality and interrupting their interview. Instantly, the spacious classroom felt frozen. Several pairs of eyes turned towards me. I clumsily pressed the hang-up button, gripping my phone as I apologized. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Just passing through, I'll go now." Eric, as composed as ever, said with a smile, "Ben, you're not interrupting. We were just wrapping up." Once he finished, the reporter remarked that since we knew each other, he'd leave for his next stop. Soon it was just the three of us. Eric walked up to me, politely inquiring, "Given that you serendipitously helped Tina, shouldn't there be some compensation? Ben, name your price." Stunned, I glanced at Tina, who remained seated with her back to me, then back at Eric. I sincerely explained I wasn't after any form of compensation. Eric's tone remained gentle but carried a warning. "Ben, Mr. Teacher, remember your role. Don't harbor any inappropriate fantasies." Once the interview aired, Tina was hailed as the epitome of sincerity in the entertainment world, her popularity and fan base soaring. I began avoiding anything related to her, focusing instead on Linda. Although the reason we got together eluded me, I knew it was a deliberate choice back then. Even after my accident, I wasn't going to hurt her while I was amnesiac. So, Despite the lingering confusion, I tried to reconnect and love Linda anew. After some careful thought, I asked her, "What was I like with you before?" She was peeling a grapefruit and paused to look me in the eye, saying, "Ben, you don't need to be what you were. I like you just the way you are. Do what you want to do." In that moment of eye contact, I realized she didn't expect me to love her the way I used to, but she'd love me just the same. A peculiar sense of relief washed over me, grateful that it was her by my side. After that, we did what any couples do. Eating out, going on dates, shopping, and seeing movies. I'd sometimes try to recall the past with her, but it always drew a blank. Then, 2 months after my amnesia, Linda came to pick me up from work. A colleague excitedly handed me a beautifully wrapped box, saying, "Ben, the watch we ordered a year ago is here." Seeing my confused look, he added it was from a friend's shop. Each watch is handmade and unique. I once visited and described my preferences to the designer, ordering one as a gift for my girlfriend. I left a message card too. To be honest, the watch was exquisite and understated. However, its vibe didn't match Linda at all. Here's the card I left with it back then. 3. Linda didn't say a word the whole time. It wasn't until she slowly opened the card that her furrowed brow smoothed out. I figured she thought the watch didn't suit her either. I glanced at her wrist, her watch worth millions, and quietly said, "If you don't like it, that's fine." After all, I wasn't sure if it was my description to the designer that went wrong or if something happened during the watch's making. She chuckled softly, her voice raspy, and told me, "I like it. I really like it. Anything you give, I like." She immediately put on the watch I gave her and never took it off since. I got curious about the note I left in the card, so I peeked. It was definitely my handwriting, but there was just one letter on the pristine page. Holding the card, I zoned out for a while, listening to the wind whooshing outside. The day Tina and Eric wrapped up filming their campus drama, I came across their live stream during a break. Someone asked Tina why she was drawn to Eric. In the video, she shifted her gaze, recalling or pondering, then lovingly looked at Eric and said, "His goodness is something I've never seen before." Considering her background, I kind of got what she meant. Someone from the dark meets their opposite. It's easy to be attracted. After hearing the answer, someone in the chat asked, "All these years, have you really never had feelings for anyone else? Just Eric?" She went quiet for a few seconds, the smile on her lips dimming. No one knew if she was sure of her feelings or thinking about someone else. But then she looked at the screen and confidently said, "No." The chat erupted in cheers, fans spamming hearts and roses. It hit me. I hadn't thought of her in a while. Even if I saw her now, I felt nothing. That emptiness that kept me awake at night had vanished. I couldn't explain it, but this realization made me feel lighter and somewhat happy. After the meeting, I happily walked out in the drizzle to see Linda's car quietly parked under a dim street lamp. It was 9 p.m. I'd been in a meeting for 3.5 hours. After texting her, she didn't have to wait. Raindrops slid down the window, and my heart felt heavy. Surprised, I got in the car and sighed. "It's so late. I told you not to wait for me." She gently wiped my face with a towel, her dark eyes serious. "But I wanted to see you." She'd always wait for me. The cramped, damp car was filled with an indescribable atmosphere. I looked at her clear-cut features, heart racing, starting to understand why I loved her before my memory loss. I figured, if nothing unexpected happens, Linda would be the one I'd want to spend my life with. Even if I couldn't remember the past, I'd fall for her again. Yet the unexpected did happen. Half a month later, on a stunningly radiant evening, Linda and I left a restaurant and walked down a bustling street, intending to buy hyacinths from a nearby florist. Suddenly, a huge billboard crashed down. It was a Ring ad featuring Tina and Eric, proclaiming eternal love. Instinctively, I pushed Linda aside, narrowly avoiding it. The crashing, the chaos of voices and car sounds, the too familiar scene brought on a severe dizziness and ringing in my ears. The piercing wail of sirens was like a sharp knife, unexpectedly slicing open memories I'd buried. Fragments of images flooded my mind. Tina and we were friends for 18 years. Also, we were a couple for 4. When we first met, she was a frail girl without a mother and often abused by her father. I was a boy kidnapped and sold to a poor, remote village. I saved her with water in a lotus leaf when she fainted from abuse under the scorching sun. She protected me with a rock when village bullies harassed me. In those dark days, every word she taught me lit up like stars, carrying my wishes. In a book she got from outside, I read a handwritten line. As long as you never give up, you will see hope. Hope took root inside me, and I told Tina, we can't stay here. Let's escape, Tina. I wasn't allowed to study or wander, but Tina could. If she wanted to leave, she could. Initially, she hesitated. But after another near-death beating by her drunken father, we fled. I was 13 in my 5th year in the village. We struggled for a hard, long time. Fortunately, with social aid, we got a chance to study. I was far behind in education, so when Tina was in high school, I was catching up in middle school. That's when Tina met Eric. But I only heard his name and saw him after Tina's exams, at her graduation party night. I was waiting outside a hotel with a coat for Tina. Afterward, while carefully helping a drunk Tina, I suddenly heard someone shout, "Eric." In that moment, Tina's body stiffened slightly, and I glanced toward the voice, seeing only a slender silhouette, not the face. When we got back, Tina stumbled into my arms, mumbling like she was talking to herself. How can someone as stuck in the mud as I am ever reach the moon? I thought she meant her dreams, so I threw myself into studying and making money. I helped her analyze every character she got, created countless fan accounts to cheer her on. I was careful to protect her dreams. But I didn't expect her moon to be Eric. Back then, she was mired in the mud and out of reach of the moon. Later, she was shining, and the moon came to her. Her first movie with Eric was after she won the Best Actress award. They played each other's first love, but Eric's character died the year Tina's character loved him the most. So even though he had limited scenes and barely any lines, the romantic setting, deep love, and memorable tragic ending brought him lots of attention early in his career. After that, nearly every film of his involved Tina, until the school drama. So everything made sense, and when she said she couldn't join me at the ancient temple in the South City, she was at a hotel with Eric instead. And when I was injured and lost memory for her, she ended our relationship and wiped all traces of us. Linda drove fast and finally stopped outside the hospital. Still worried, she carefully helped me out of the car and wanted me to see a doctor. I let her take my hand, absent-mindedly following her. Her hand had scrapes from the ground, dirted clothes from protecting me. Her hair messy, tousled by the evening wind. She looked so different from the first time we met. Half a year ago at a colleague's birthday party, I got harassed by a drunk guy and ended up in their booth. The dim, flashing lights cast over a room full of handsome guys and beautiful girls. But I instantly noticed Linda casually playing with her glass on the sofa. Back then, her laid-back, carefree demeanor outshone even Tina sitting beside her. Later, that drunk guy grabbed me, claiming I harassed his girlfriend. Tina turned her head away, avoiding my pleading look, while everyone else just watched the drama unfold. Only Linda. She put down her glass and walked over to me. Her commanding presence made the drunk guy pause. Linda asked me, "Did you ever bother his girlfriend?" I shook my head, explaining quickly and surely, "No, I don't even know him." After that, she suddenly smiled at me, reassured me, "Don't be scared. You look good, I believe you." Then, before anyone reacted, she grabbed the drunk guy's wrist, made him let go, and smashed a bottle over his head without hesitation. The loud crash silenced the booth. In my days, she sent me back without me remembering to thank her. At first, I thought she was just being heroic. Until later, after the party, passing that half-open booth door, I heard someone ask Linda, "Why did you help him earlier?" After a long pause, in a low voice marked with sympathy and affection, she said words that stuck with me. I saw his shadow in those eyes. The memory cut off. I stopped dead in my tracks, gripping her hand tightly. The hospital buzzed around us as Linda looked back, softly asking, "What's up?" Avoiding her gaze, I focused on her wrist, speaking with a strange catch in my voice. I'm fine. No need to see a doctor. Also, Linda, take off that watch. It wasn't meant for you. It stood for Tina. I got into the taxi with the watch, watching her figure fade in the rearview mirror as I left. I pulled out my phone, researching Tina-related keywords, and scrolled through memories of her and Eric until I found the scene they recreated from a romantic reality show recently. Flowers, sunsets, hot air balloons, endless romance and love. The wind dried the dampness from my eyes. I remembered the night Tina asked me to be together. Junior year in college, a girl offered me a ride and suddenly confessed to me at my entrance. Shocked, I didn't know what to say when Tina returned, standing in front of me. She already has a girlfriend, Tina told the girl coldly. I stood there stunned. After the girl apologized and left, I whispered to Tina, "What did you just say?" She held my hand and didn't let go, saying, "Ben, let's be together." I did like her. At 8, abducted to a mountain village, beaten for crying nonstop and burning with fever for days, I forgot many people and events. I later saved an unconscious Tina and felt an urge to follow her as she walked away. Years of dependence followed, seeing each other at our worst. Ending up with her seemed the most natural thing. To cooperate with her, I never spoke of our relationship publicly, just expressed feelings with a small a. Shortly after, she broke through the scene with a brief supporting role and rose ever higher, growing more distant. Looking back, if either Eric hadn't left or that girl hadn't confessed, Tina never would have proposed being together. She never even said she liked me. Closing the page, paying, leaving the car, I tossed the watch in a roadside trash can. If she wanted to erase us, I'd let it go too. But if not for that kidnapping incident, we would be people from two entirely different worlds with no connection. Just like now. And in the future, I had no plans to cling to Tina. She wasn't worth any more of my energy. Yet, just a day after my memory returned, her relationship with Eric trended on the news again. The story starts when two people were exploring the mountains in a couple's reality show and got caught in a storm and landslide. The lack of safety measures from the crew led to injuries among everyone involved. Tina got hurt the worst. She was at the back of the group, helping Eric, who had an injured foot, stuck in a low area. When the danger came, Tina told Eric to climb to higher ground. But terrified of the collapsing rocks and trees, Eric didn't turn back to help Tina. He ran off instead. A video surfaced online, chaotic and mixed, and people had their own opinions. Many insisted Eric was probably just rushing to get help in case of another landslide. Understandable, in a crisis, everyone for themselves. Others question, why wasn't it Eric who got hurt? How does he deserve Tina's devotion? Eric stayed silent about the incident, and Tina, though she survived, ended up in a coma with a leg lost. A co-worker, holding a phone, remarked, "Are they cursed or something? Last time you saved them from harm, now it's worse. Trouble seems inevitable." I turned off my screen, not paying attention anymore, and smiled, saying, maybe. I hadn't talked to anyone other than Linda about my memory coming back, so nobody knew about our separation. Yet my life marked its regular pace. Sometimes, before class, I'd habitually glance at an empty seat by the window where Linda used to sneak in, wearing a black hoodie and cap to sit and listen to my lectures. In a class of 100, her presence was always obvious to me. She'd sit quietly, focused, sketching on sheets of white paper, capturing me in her doodles. Almond-shaped eyes, arched brows, long hair up, even the small mole on my left brow. I was always amazed by her drawing skills. She'd often hold up her sketches, marveling, "The person I drew looks so good." Once, lost in thought before class, I looked over to that seat again when a student in the front asked, "Waiting for someone?" "Teacher?" I gripped my book a bit tighter, smiled down, and said, "No, not waiting for anyone. No one's coming." After class ended, I stood by the podium as usual, letting students leave first. Minutes later, while gathering my books, a breeze blew in through the open window, picked up a paper which landed at the door. Sunlight caught it, illuminating every stroke and line. My heart skipped as I turned back to the empty classroom, standing there a long time. Deep down, I had to admit, my feelings for Tina faded during my memory loss, but my feelings for Linda grew during that same period. But I knew she didn't genuinely love me. That's why, after my memory came back, I avoided meeting her. Then, one night at a lavish pre-wedding bachelor party thrown by a rich co-worker, I stepped out for air from the lively suite and leaned against the hotel's glass railing, texting. From across the building in a rising glass elevator, I unexpectedly saw Linda. She wore an all-black gown, carrying a luxury purse, surrounded by a group of people. Our eyes met as the elevator stopped. Someone nudged her shoulder, prompting her to go. I turned away and returned to the suite. Someone handed me a grapefruit juice, asking if I'd join the next event. I politely declined. Sitting in a dark corner, I watched the flashing lights, remembering when I first woke up in the hospital with amnesia and met Linda. The evidence she presented for us being together was full of holes. Any careful thought would reveal the inconsistencies. But fresh out of memory, in desperate need of security, I convinced myself of its truth. Thinking back, Tina didn't account for the dangers her decision left me in. Looking now, I'm thankful the person who stepped in as my girlfriend was Linda. After the party, I lingered alone in the now silent suite, finishing the last sip of my drink before leaving. There she was outside the door, Linda. She leaned casually against the wall, hands behind her back, seemingly waiting for the door to open. A faint smell of alcohol hung in the air. I paused before asking, "What's up?" "I wanted to see you," she answered, too honest for me to know how to respond. I sighed, replying, "Linda, there's nothing between us now. What if I say I really do like you?" I had once imagined myself. How similar was I to that boy who made her wait and hope? But she saved me once and deceived me once. We're even. As she began, "Ben, actually I cut her off. "Do you need me to spell it out?" "Linda, I don't want any relationship with you, past, present, or future. From my experience with Tina, I learned a faulty relationship shouldn't start in the first place." Perhaps due to lighting, her face seemed pale for a moment. After a pause, she asked, "Can't we at least be friends?" Meeting her eyes, I firmly said, "I don't need you as a friend." After saying my piece, I thought I'd feel peace inside. But that didn't happen. Each sleepless night replayed the image of her pale face over and over. During the brief time I spent with her, every little thing we experienced together started to vividly reappear in my mind. The bad part is, she still kept reaching out to me, wanting to see me, constantly finding ways to be around me. Over time, I became incredibly sensitive to her figure, her name, and her unique light floral scent. Even when I saw someone who resembled her, I would subconsciously avoid them. I knew I wasn't really avoiding her. I was avoiding my own feelings. The day I saw the news about Linda becoming the head of the Lin family, I was grocery shopping. Financial and entertainment media were all over the place, reporting about her. She lost her mom young, her dad remarried, and her stepmom brought a son who was her half-brother. She was suppressed and disliked, forced to hide her talent and ambition, just waiting for the right moment to seize power. Interestingly, people found she had been doing charity work since she was young, donating to orphanages and remote rural areas every year. Standing between shelves stacked with various juices, I looked up at the large screen above, showing a clip of countless reporters thrusting microphones at Linda. In the video, she wasn't the carefree person the internet used to talk about, nor the gentle, elegant figure I remembered. She seemed distant, looking down on them, exuding a commanding presence. A reporter intentionally asked why this position was hers and not her excellent, overseas educated brother's. Faced with the challenge, she glanced down at them and smiled faintly. "Don't you understand the principle that only the strong rise to power?" I suddenly recalled the scene where she smashed someone with a bottle to save me. Maybe that was the real her, gentle yet fierce, detached yet wild. In the short time I was with her, I never got the chance to learn about her family, so it's the first time I learned about her background. I had speculated those rumors were intentional from her side, but I never imagined the real reasons behind them. The next moment, a gossipy reporter in the video asked if it's true Linda was looking for a boy, if he was her love. The scene went silent for a moment. Linda looked at the camera softly and said, "Yes." I calmly turned back to my shopping. Only when checking out did I realize I picked the wrong juice. After that, Linda continued to appear around me as she always did. Even though she never brought up being together again, everything she did told me she hadn't given up. Like when my car broke down in the pouring rain, she'd be the first one there. Or when I twisted my ankle hiking, there she'd be, getting her assistant to carry me down. Until one time, when I was recuperating at home from the flu I caught at school, she knocked on my door. I still hadn't fully recovered, and what was left of my rationality kept telling me to keep distance. So I tried to close the door after saying, "Stay away, you might get infected." She stopped the door, squeezed her way in, shut it, and looked at me, saying, "I'm not afraid." My medicated mind was too foggy to argue, so I just lay on the sofa and let her. When I was with Tina, she hardly had time to be with me when I was sick. I mostly went to the hospital, took medicine, and got better on my own. I wasn't sensitive. She was busy, I understood. I managed fine without her care. But now, as I dazedly watched Linda tending to me, switching between giving me water and cooking porridge, I was curious. So I asked her, "Linda, aren't you busy?" She just started managing the company. She'd have more than her share of things to handle. At my place, she'd just be wasting time. Kneeling next to the sofa, she softly wiped my face with a damp towel, and her breath brushed my cheek so close I could hardly avoid it. It took a while before I heard her say, "Ben, I remember I told you, nothing is more important than you." Perhaps being sick made me more sensitive. My heart swelled with emotion. Being alone while sick before never felt this tough. I shut my eyes and stayed silent, unable to sleep, comforted by the quiet rustle of her movements. I wasn't sure how long passed before night fell. I opened my eyes to see Linda in the kitchen reading instructions on various medicine boxes. Orange sunset rays streamed through the glass, touching her as I got up from the soft carpet, leaned against the kitchen door, watching her, and softly asked, "Linda, did you find that boy?" She visibly froze for a moment, set down the medicine, and turned to me. I did. My throat was sore. I wanted to ask why she was still pestering me, but I held on to a little dignity and asked, "Are you two not together?" She stepped closer, sighed. "He said he didn't want to be with me, didn't want any relation at all." Was she using me as a stand-in? Borrowing a moment of her love for herself? My heart trembled, and I lowered my head, not wanting to meet her gaze. Finally, I gave in. "Linda, can you stop this? I admit I like you, but I can't abandon my principles to be a substitute. Why do you keep pressing on?" Her breath became heavier, and she repeated, word by word, "You like me?" With my head still down, she suddenly hugged me tightly, and though my foggy mind worsened with emotion, I heard her say, "Ben, you're the one who said you didn't want any relationship with me." The tightness in my heart snapped, something surfaced in my mind, and I finally asked, "Me?" Her head pressed against my chest, her voice low and muffled. "Yeah, it was you. 18 long years, way too long. I was 8 when I was hit, causing days of high fever that erased all before. My first memories start post-8. So, I never knew who my parents or relatives were. Even after considering finding my family, nothing ever came up. But I never imagined Linda was linked to me before I turned 8. When I was just 3, my parents died in a chemical explosion. I was taken in and raised by my mom's best friend. From that time on, Linda came into my life. We were together for 5 years until I was 8. Then, Linda's dad used the excuse of taking me to see her to meet his first love. And somehow he lost me. For the next 8 years, Linda searched for me. That's what she told me. But those lost memories faded from my mind and might never return. So I wasn't sure if I was the one she was looking for. After all, I had no family to speak of. How could I prove it? What if she got the wrong person? I asked her this the very next day. She handed me an album in response. It was filled with pictures of me and her, from when I was 3 until I was 8. Without exception, there was a small mole between the eyebrows of the boy in the photos. After I was 8, every picture had a hand-drawn boy next to her. That was me, the way she imagined me, for 8 years. Maybe she noticed I wasn't saying anything. Worrying that it brought up old, painful memories, she spoke in a light-hearted tone. I imagined what you'd look like every year you grew older, but imagination never compares to the real thing. I quietly held the album and then asked her, "Is it just because of this mole between my brows?" She paused, then took out our last photo together, flipping it to the back. There was a scribbled message, "Forever together." Below that were 2 small fingerprints. I stared at the words, hearing Linda laugh bitterly. Back then, nobody knew that just after saying "forever together," we'd be separated completely. Shortly after, Linda took me to visit my parents and her mother. I also met the person she called the reason for her mother's death and for losing me, her father. Standing in the cold, lonely hospital room, Linda held my hand, smiling nonchalantly. She leaned down to the person lying speechless due to a stroke and said, "Want to hear some good news?" Then she opened a paternity report and read it out loud. "Congratulations. You've been raising someone else's son for 29 years. You better stay alive. Wouldn't want to dirty my mom's path to reincarnation." She tossed the report at her father, eyes red with emotion, then left with me. Before we left the room, I glanced back. The person on the bed was left in shock and hopelessness, staring at the ceiling, eyes glistening. I didn't pity them. They were reaping what they had sown. I heard about Tina again when she woke up from a coma. Soon after, her breakup with Eric became a trending topic. Their once celebrated romance ended abruptly. Nobody cared about the real story behind it. Not long after, Eric was seen dining and watching movies with a newly famous figure. Their new relationship was quickly confirmed. Childhood sweethearts rekindled. Fans were ecstatic, cheering for the first love reunited narrative. Tina's leg wasn't completely incapacitated. She could use crutches to walk. During her time in the hospital after waking up, she called me countless times. I looked at the familiar number without picking up, and eventually blocked it. She must have borrowed someone else's phone because I accidentally answered once. As soon as I heard her say, "Ben," I hung up. Before she got out of the hospital, I visited a well-respected professor and passed by her room. It seemed like she was arguing with Eric. Both were so agitated. I could clearly hear Eric yell, "I didn't mean not to grab you. It was dangerous. What if I got hurt? Tina, don't you love me? Why blame me? Now you're just holding me back." After a while, I heard Tina's low, despairing laugh, followed by a simple "get out." I didn't understand whether her laugh was mocking her naive belief in mutual love, or regretting her deep affection over the years. But it didn't concern me anymore. Still, she found me not long after getting out of the hospital. I wasn't surprised. I knew it would happen eventually. That night, holding a bouquet of hyacinths, I got off the elevator to find her standing outside my door with crutches. She wore a black coat, eyes red and cheeks thin, looking visibly changed. When she saw me, her eyes welled up as she stepped closer, saying, "Ben." I stepped back, keeping my distance. "Tina, do we know each other well?" She suddenly grabbed my hand, quickly saying, "Ben, I'm your girlfriend, not Linda. She deceived you. Eric and I only had a contract relationship. You've always loved me." I looked at her calmly, skeptically, freeing my hand slowly. I asked, "Really? Then how do you prove that I loved you?" She had no answer. Then, she tried desperately to make me see a doctor. "Ben, you just forgot about me. Once you remember, you'll know who you truly love. I found the best neurologist to help you get your memory back." When I refused to go to the hospital, she spoke of our past. She said we escaped the remote mountains together, lived in a basement, ate instant noodles, and vowed to stay together forever. She told me how I took care of her when she was sick and how I once waited all night in the snow for her audition. She remembered everything. Yet she had no problem abandoning me. The one who least wanted me to regain my memory now wished for just that. I bet she never thought she'd have to come back one day. Looking at her slightly reddened eyes and her humble pleading, I felt nothing. That afternoon, when I refused to see her again, I got a letter. It was one I wrote 4 years ago. That was from the early days with Tina when writing letters to your future self became a thing online. I thought it was cool and roped Tina into writing one too. She never did, though, so only mine existed. If nothing else, I guess it was the only bit of proof we ever dated. The rain-washed sky was full of evening glow, like the horizon was on fire. I took the letter into the bathroom, but didn't open it. I burned it. After that, she was swamped with health and work issues and didn't have time to bother me. We saw each other again in early fall. I was leaving the library, walking along the sycamore-lined road. Yellowing leaves were gently falling, and I stopped involuntarily when I saw a pavilion not far away. It was like back then. I heard footsteps on the sycamore leaves behind me but didn't move. Then the familiar voice came. It was here you shielded me from that wooden box, and then you forgot me. Oddly, I remembered a trending topic from a few days back. The story of a famous artist getting back with Eric after her cheating scandal broke out. She lied to her boyfriend about CP, couple marketing with Eric, but it was actually infidelity. Her ex exposed their affair with evidence. Amidst viewers' rage, people were summarizing Eric's career highlights, dating the star and dating the top influencer. Then, a fresh face emerged in the entertainment industry, a pure white jasmine. As for Tina, her leg injury hampered her acting. Those loyal Forever fans eventually turned their gaze to newer faces, who were younger, more beautiful, and healthier. It's only a matter of time before she's forgotten. After her last movie about reincarnation and changing fate, she announced she wouldn't act in any more TV shows or films. She only joined some variety shows occasionally, but at least she clinched the title of most romantic in the entertainment industry. All the shows credit her like that. Welcome to the stage, the epitome of deep affection, Tina. No one knows what she really feels when she hears that title. Much like no one will ever know our story. I snapped back to reality, turned, and looked at her, giving a relieved smile. Really? I don't remember. Then I walked away. After a few steps, the breeze carried her mumbled words to me. If I could go back to the year we met, I wouldn't let go of your hand. I paused briefly, a slight smile bending my lips, and kept walking. She was wrong. If I could go back to that year, I'd choose not to meet her at all. Now I was just getting back on track. At the end of the road, Linda was waiting. I ran to her as she opened her arms for a hug, then whisked me away to a beautifully decorated private garden. Ever since learning about my family history, both Linda and I consciously avoided talking about being together. That moment felt like a confession was coming, but she gently pushed a cake toward me and said, "Ben, happy birthday." Holding the flowers, I felt a little dazed. This day turned out to be my actual birthday. Later, she placed 18 beautifully wrapped boxes in front of me, her eyes bright and dark as ink. "These are your overdue 18-year gifts." My eyes stung with tears as I looked at her with a smile. "Linda, you don't have to be so nice to me." This sense of being cherished felt overwhelming. She cupped my face, looking steadily into my eyes. "I signed up for the long haul. I'm going to be good to you for life." I glanced at her striking face so close to mine and gave her a kiss on the cheek. Instantly, she froze, her cheeks blazing red and spreading further. It made me want to laugh. While she stood there stunned, I took out a watch from my bag, glanced at her empty wrist, and told her, "Give me your hand." She obediently reached out, letting me carefully put the watch on her wrist. The air felt charged with something undefinable, almost like putting a ring on her finger. Just as I finished adjusting it, she wrapped her arms around my neck, stealing my breath with a quick kiss. A few minutes later, I opened the camera on my phone. From forgetting to breathe, my face was just as flushed as hers. I was about to check my lips for any damage when Linda appeared in the frame. She grabbed my hand and phone, pressing the shutter. Since age 8, our family photos had been lacking. From right this moment, they picked up where they left off. My longest journey in life also began the day I met Ben, 18 long years. If it weren't for that accident, the one by her side, growing up together, should have been me. Even now, I can still recall that normal afternoon after my cello lesson, when I found out Ben had disappeared. I was 10, first tried the bitter taste of losing someone dear, holding a photo we took just the other day, staying awake all night. Afterward, I started donating to orphanages and impoverished areas. Even if a 1 in 10,000 chance, I hoped Ben was somehow okay. I learned to paint, imagining how she would look each year. As our family business grew very large, I discovered my dad's affair within the family. It hit me that, on that fateful day, his excuse for taking Ben was to take her to meet an old flame. That's how Ben got lost. The following year, my mom passed away feeling miserable. She ended up with her first love and their illegitimate child. I became the odd one out. But life's not that kind to everyone. She used the money my mom brought to start a business, pushed my mom to her limit, and in the end, they lived happily ever after. Later, under the woman's constant watch and pressure, I became the aimless person she wanted me to be, hanging out with a bunch of bad influences. Then one night at a party, I met Ben. When he burst through the door looking panicked, with fear in his eyes, my heart skipped a beat. But, in these 18 years, I've met too many people who resembled him in my memories, each time ending in disappointment. So this time, after I sent him back to the booth, I hesitated. What if looking him up just leads to disappointment again? I'd heard that there's a 1,000-year-old tree in the ancient temple in the southern part of the city that can grant any wish. I didn't believe it before, but now I was willing to try. After climbing 3,600 steps, I stood before this grand old tree covered with red wishing ribbons. Tying my own ribbon tight to the branches, I clasped my hands together and silently prayed. I wish to see her. I hope we stay together forever. At the same time, a deep, somewhat familiar male voice spoke the same wish. As soon as he finished speaking, all the wish ribbons on the tree fluttered in the wind, and a clear sound of bells drifted from the eaves. Through the sea of moving red ribbons, I glanced to the other side of the tree. There was Ben. Seeing his familiar features, the thought of giving it another try suddenly rose in my heart. If meeting once among millions is a coincidence, what could meeting twice mean? I remembered a line I wrote in a book I once donated. As long as you never give up, there will always be hope. I never gave up, so I did find him. Later, when I looked into his past, I realized he was with Tina. But surprisingly, he got injured and lost his memory because of her. And Tina, wanting to get back with her first love, tried to ditch him. When I offered to help him, I told her, in the past, now, and in the future, Tina, you two will have nothing to do with each other. After that, while she hurriedly destroyed the evidence of her relationship with Ben, I made sure to search every trace of them together and personally erase them again. Now, unless Ben decides to remember and admit it, nothing can prove they were ever together. Everyone says I am only interested in him on a whim, just passing time. No one knows how nervous and sincere I was when I pushed open the door of that hospital room to stand before him, even though I was long erased from his memory. But that's all right, we can meet again for the first time. On that afternoon, 18 years apart, we met for the first time and also reunited after a long time.